Hello viewers and welcome to another match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today we have a Dark Eldar faction mirror match filmed at the Fantasy Flight Games Event Center. On the left we have Taylor Parolini playing as Archon Salaine Morn, while to the right, provider of today's footage, we see Christopher Dale Bates playing instead as Packmaster Kith. Kith starts the game in possession of our initiative token, and planet number 1, currently under contest, is going to be none other than the forced random card discard planet Boundess. Kith's first deploy action is going to be positioning a copy of her signature army unit to planet number 1. That's Kith's Chimera Masters. It costs 2, it's got a command icon, 1 attack, as well as 2 hit points, and more importantly, it generates a 2/1 creature trait Chimera token at that same planet. But on the opposite end of the table, we see the Kabbalite Harriers, one of our newest Dark Eldar faction common army units. For the cost of 2, they themselves have a command icon, 1 attack, and also 2 hit points, but as a reaction, whenever a Kabbalite is deployed by you at that planet, you can pick an undamaged enemy army unit at that same planet to take 1 point of damage. And note, Chris has discarded a copy of Warp Storm in order to ensure that his Chimera Masters remain entirely hale, but at planet number 3, Kith has thrown out a copy of the Rogue Trader, 1 cost, 1 command icon, plus 1 resource bonus, and that's currently sitting at a 2-card bonus planet, and it looks like Archon Salaine Morn has been lucky enough to come across a copy of her signature support, the Nexus of Shadows. It just costs 1, but limit once per phase for 2 resources, you can draw a card, and considering Kith's predilection for card choke, over the course of this game, that may well end up proving invaluable. Both of our players have by now put out a copy of the 2-cost unique support, Archon's Palace, and that, whenever your opponent wins a command struggle, you just pick that planet and you turn off the card or resource bonus, including any and all modifiers associated with that planet entirely. So that's definitely going to change the outcome of our command struggles. But planet number 4, we've got a copy of Incubus Warrior on Kith's side of the table. For the cost of 2, it's got a couple command icons, 3 attack, and just 1 hit point. And as our players get ready for the command phase, note that planet number 2 is going to be Taurus, which rewards you if you win a battle at that planet, and you control fewer units than your opponent with your choice of 3 resources or 3 cards. So I definitely envision Packmaster Kith trying to protect that planet at all expense, and I definitely think that would be a desirable destination for Archon Salaine Morn, and considering it's a red material type icon possessing planet, we could easily see her dump a copy of Shadowed Thorn's Pillagers, her signature ambushing army unit, into play at that same planet to help kind of level the playing field. Archon Salaine Morn is a 2/7, Kith is a 2/6, and a 2/1 and a 2/2. It's looking a little bit favorable for Salaine, but planet number 2, Kith arrives, generates a Chimera token. Planet number 4, Archon Salaine Morn arrives opposite that Incubus Warrior, and looks like these command struggles may change dramatically, but planet number 1 is potentially, well, going to be nothing for either player. Planet number 2 might be a card and a resource for Kith. Planet 3 is probably not 2 cards, but a resource for Kith, and planet number 3 is probably not a couple of resources for Salaine. But planet number 1, Chimera token with initiative, takes a swing, kills off that copy of the Kabbalite Harriers. Forced random card discard planet is going to be a copy of Siren Zithlex, thrown into Taylor's discard pile. That's going to be a planet won by Kith. Congratulations to Chris. It's going to be a green strongpoint type icon planet added to his victory display. Kith is also going to end up winning the battle at planet number 2, but of course Kith isn't going to be able to activate that battle ability because currently Archon Salaine Morn only has 1 unit relative to Kith's, looks like 6. Archon Salaine Morn takes a swing, and the timely interjection of a copy of the 2 shield value Suffering is going to mitigate that damage all the way down to 0, and therefore that copy of Incubus Warrior may end up, well, dealing 3 points of damage to our Archon unless we see a copy of Archon's Terror, something along those lines. Indeed, that's going to be 3 points of damage to Archon Salaine Morn. Looks like Archon Salaine Morn is ready to attack again, and that's going to be a dead copy of Incubus Warrior, so I could only imagine that must have meant that Chris was trying to bluff because he did not retreat. That's +1 resource for Taylor, -1 resource for Chris. The initiative token bounces over to Taylor as we go through our HQ phase. That's going to be 4 resources and 2 cards for each of our players. New 5th planet is going to be Iridial, the healing planet. And what exactly are we going to see? Planet number 1 currently under contest is going to be Taurus, and now the world is both of our players' oysters here. What exactly are they going to do? I guess Aatrox Prime could be a pretty decent option for Archon Salaine Morn to arrive at, just because if Kith shows up at planet number 1, she's starting to establish a little bit of a train for herself. Planet number 1, Taylor throws out a copy of Bloodied Reavers at that planet. It's a 2/2 for 2 that gets a +2 attack value bonus provided a Warlord is sitting at that same planet, and a copy of Murder of Razorwings results in the random discard of a copy of Archon's Terror from Taylor's hand, and that about sucks. Murder of Razorwings is a creature trait, 1/1 for 1, sitting at planet 1. No command icons though, and we see yet another one of our newest Dark Eldar faction army units, the Dying Sun Marauder, being placed at planet number 1. But on Kith's side of the table, this resulted in the discard of a copy of Doombolt, rather uncommon Chaos faction allied inclusion there. So Pact of the Homunculi, played by Packmaster Kith, means Chris draws a couple of cards, and we do that random card discard, and that copy of Kith's Chimera Masters ended up being discarded direct from Kith's HQ. Both players have now got a copy of Bloodied Reavers at planet number 1, and that Dying Sun's Marauder is for the cost of 2, another Cabalite. That means it refunded 1 resource to Archon Salaine Morn, and as a 2/3 unit, whenever you gain a resource, it readies. So if we see a Shadowthorn's Pillager being ambushed into play, that could well result in the Dying Sun Marauder attacking multiple times. But Archon Salaine Morn and Packmaster Kith both arrive at planet number 1. That means that Kith is not actually, neither player is going to win anything at planet number 1. Planet number 2 is presumably just going to be 1 resource for Packmaster Kith, and then that is going to be it. A whole lot of nothing for Archon Salaine Morn, but she does possess initiative. That's going to be her Bloodied Reavers attacking, killing off Chris's copy of Bloodied Reavers. Note that both players are currently sitting at planet number 1. A Chimera token is going to take a swing, but at what? Is it going to try to kill off the Bloodied Reavers? Is it going to try to drive Archon Salaine Morn herself from that planet? She still has 4 hit points, and it looks like she now has 2 hit points remaining. Remember that Packmaster Kith is also going to be present at planet number 1. Looks like Archon Salaine Morn uses her combat turn in order to retreat, and that's going to be another copy of a Chimera token taking a swing at that copy of the Bloodied Reaver, and that is now outright going to be killed. This is going to be a Dying Sun's Marauder, dealing a value of 2 blow out to Packmaster Kith, so even though it's off screen, Kith is going to be sitting at 4 HP remaining. That's going to be the Murder of Razorwings taking a swing. That's going to be a single point of damage on that Dying Sun's Marauder. Not that Chris has the resources for it, but it's definitely within the Clavex War Leader threshold, and at present we could see a Dying Sun. Okay, alright, Kith finishes that kill, and that's going to be a dead copy of Dying Sun's Marauder. Looks like we see a copy of Clavex War Leader being thrown into play. It's not going to end up killing an enemy army unit thanks to its reaction, but it does interplay. It does take a swing, presumably at Packmaster Kith. Another copy of Suffering is going to be discarded. That's going to be 1 point of damage dealt to Packmaster Kith. At the end of a combat round, the Clavex War Leader retreats. We see a copy of the new Dark Eldar event, Gut and Pillage, being used, and that means that when Kith wins a battle at a red material type icon possessing planet akin to Archon Salaine Morn, you gain 3 resources. So let's see. Chris, all he's going to have to do is end up winning the battle at planet number 2, and he's going to be able to win through green strongpoint type icons. Note that the initiative token is now going to be in Packmaster Kith's possession, and what exactly do we see? We see another copy of Kith's Chimera Masters being thrown out to planet number 2. We do not have, I guess, actually, Chris mentioned this before the match. They forgot to reveal their new 5th planet, so both of our players are operating without being privy to all the information they should have access to. So we'll have to see when exactly our players end up realizing that there are only 4 planets in play. Looks like Archon Salaine Morn has decided not to play anything. Archon Salaine Morn ends up sending herself to planet number 3. Very interesting indeed, and Kith is going to set up at her victory condition, but despite that being a whole hell of a lot of Chimera tokens, note that Aatrox Prime is going to be Salaine Morn's destination there, and that's going to be a lot of possible damage being dealt out to all those units gathered at planet number 2. So planet number 1 is potentially, well, probably not going to be a couple of cards for Packmaster Kith, but it is presumably going to be 1 resource. Planet Planet number 2 is going to be a couple of resources for Packmaster Kith. Planet number 3 is going to be Aatrox Prime, resulting in probably just one resource for Archon Salaine Morn. And planet number 5 remains a bit of a mystery, so let's, who knows what exactly it is, but that's going to be Elowith 1, entirely uncontested after the activation of the Nexus of Shadows, which does not actually result in it being exhausted, but I can only imagine Taylor did exhaust it just for a kind of a queue, because it's limit once per phase. But Kith won Elowith. That means it's a blue tech icon added to Kith's victory display, and that also means that Kith is going to have a chance to look at the top 3 cards for deck and add one of those cards to her hand. Kith is going to be +1 resource, and Taylor's going to be -1 resource because of Ossus 4, and Aatrox Prime firing at Ossus 4 resulted in the death of, 4, maybe 5 Chimera tokens, plus that murder of Razor Wings, and now Kith isn't looking nearly so frightening now that all Kith has sitting at planet number 1 is going to be a lowly copy of those dumbass Chimera Masters. Best of luck to you, Chris, in managing to win this one. Granted, you've got a giant stockpile of resource tokens, but you may well need each and every one of them in order to be able to overcome the relentless might of Taylor Parolini. So, Kith is currently sitting at 2 hit points remaining. We've got a copy of Clavex Warleader sitting at planet number 2, entirely irrelevant to Christopher Day's earliest possible victory condition. Planet number 1, we see a copy of Siren Zithlex touchdown after a copy of Dying Sun's Marauder, and now what exactly are we going to see in regard to Taylor trying to win this one? We see another copy of the Dying Sun's Marauder. Remember, that's whenever a Kabalite happens to be played at that same planet, whenever you gain a resource, which normally happens because of Kabalites. We see another instance of Pact of the Homunculi, resulting in a dead Kith's Chimera Masters, a sacrificed one, but that's a forced random card discard, and we happen to see a copy of Last Breath discarded by Archon Salaine Morn. So, not only is that a 3-value shield card, but attached to Archon Salaine Morn, whenever she'd have damaged an enemy army unit through an attack, it would have gotten a persistent -3 attack value debuff, which does indeed persist until the end of the phase. Siren Zithlex at planet number 1 is a 3-cost 2-command icon 2/3 that results in any enemy unit being deployed to her planet arriving exhausted, and that doubly sucks because if you were to throw out a copy of Shadowed Thorn's Pillager, that ambushing signature army unit of Salaine Morn's, that still results in that ambushed unit entering play exhausted, even though it would ready both of those copies of Dying Sun's Pillager when Archon Salaine Morn generates 1 resource. But Kith shows up at 2, Archon Salaine Morn arrives at 1, so planet number 1 is probably not actually going to be a couple of resources for Taylor. Planet number 2 is probably just going to be a resource for Kith. We finally see our 4th final planet unveiled. It's going to be Farron, that route planet. I suppose neither of our players went to that destination. Here at planet number 1, we see initiative in the possession of Archon Salaine Morn. Interestingly, we see a copy of Dying Sun's Marauder take a swing. That's going to be 2 points of damage dealt to that Incubus Warrior, which is going to be outright slain, and I guess Kith is trying to readjust and potentially result in the bloodying or something along those lines of Archon Salaine Morn, because Aatrox Prime 1 could easily result in a bunch of damage going out to Salaine, to those Dying Sun's Marauders, and both of our players currently have some resource tokens remaining, so we could see up to 2 copies of Clavex Warleader being dropped at planet number 1, and if we do see 2 copies, then that is going to be a very hurting Taylor, and okay, so Siren Zithlex isn't going to damage. Ouch! So that is going to be a bloodied Archon Salaine Morn as opposed to trying to damage a Dying Sun's Marauder and then subsequently throw out a copy of Clavex Warleader, which itself could have bloodied Archon Salaine Morn. I guess that's going to be the battle there. We see a copy of Raid used, and that's a bit unfortunate. Raid is actually take 1 resource, it's not gain 1 resource, so it looks like there was a little bit of a mistake by our players here. They played Raid as its gain 1 resource, so it's actually not. So erroneously, both copies of that Dying Sun's Marauder ended up being readied, and then Siren Zithlex ended up being destroyed. But I believe this may have been clarified in the Card Game DB forums by user KTom or P. Brennan after, subsequent to this match being filmed and completed, and just because this was a fantastic opportunity to show off some of our newest Dark Eldar cards, I had Christopher Dale Bates, as a personal favor, give me this game regardless. So, you know, no worries about a little bit of a mistake there, but of course that's going to be a Planet 1 by Archon Salaine Morn. That's going to be -1 resource for Kith, I believe, +1 resource for Salaine, presuming that was indeed Ossus 4, and then at Kith's planet, Kith retreats, and then the Clavex Warleader manages to kill that copy of the Chimera token, and then Aatrox Prime is able to fire at Packmaster Kith, and that's going to be a point of damage dealt out to Kith, and now kind of the remainder of the game is really could go to either player here, so we'll have to see what exactly happens. We've got a copy of the faction-specific army unit resource cost-reducing Altar of Torment played by Archon Salaine Morn. So I believe that's decreasing the cost of units as opposed to you regaining resources, but I guess Archon Salaine Morn definitely likes to save a lot of resources, so a very curious inclusion there. Definitely not the ideal time to come across that event. And what exactly do we see here for Packmaster Kith? But we see a copy of Chimera Den when there's just one Chimera token in play. So Archon Salaine Morn shows up at planet number 2 with those 2 Dying Suns Marauders. Kith arrives at planet number 2 as well. I could only imagine that Kith is either going to be shutting off the card bonus associated, well, I guess with planet number 1, and that's going to be +1 resource there for Archon Salaine Morn, and Archon is going to end up winning planet number 1 entirely uncontested unless we see a Clavex Warleader being dropped into play, and that is going to result in that Aatrox Prime potentially killing off a copy of Salaine Morn. So, interestingly, we see those copies of Dying Sun Marauder being readied, and I can't quite for the life of me figure out why that is. I'm not seeing a Shadowthorn's Pillager anywhere on the board, and I guess maybe there was a Gut and Pillage used at 1, or perhaps not, because we've not quite resolved that yet, so I apologize, my dear viewers, but I am not doing the best job commentating today's match. But Chimera Den moves the Chimera token away from planet number 1, puts it at, oh, okay, God, so the Dying Sun Marauders, of course, you gain a resource from the command phase, so that's why they ready. My sincerest apologies, that was asinine for me to miss that. But planet number 1, the Chimera token is going to be able to swing because the Chimera has initiative. That Clavex Warleader is going to be able to be attacked, and then Chris may well have multiple copies of Clavex Warleader himself. So we see a copy of Raid discarded by Taylor to block the onslaught afforded by that copy of the Chimera token. So the Chimera token deals no damage. The Clavex Warleader takes a swing. Agonizer of Bren is discarded as shields. That means that the Agonizer is going to end up resulting in no damage being taken by that Chimera token. The Chimera token is going to have another opportunity to swing at the Clavex Warleader, and will we see it damaged? I can only imagine that if we do indeed see it damaged, that's going to be Chris's. All right, that's going to be a copy of Archon's Terror, removing the Clavex Warleader from that planet, and I could only imagine that that's going to be setting up Chris for the following round to drop a Clavex Warleader into play and remove that Clavex Warleader. And interestingly, it looks like that is going to be a copy of Archon's Terror being played by Taylor, and that's going to remove the Chimera token from play at planet number 1. So Chris does not decide to play a copy of Clavex Warleader or anything like that. Planet number 1 is removed from the game. Neither player ends up capturing it, and now I guess this is one hell of a game. It's going to be either Kith winning at our current planet number 1 as we move through our HQ phase, or otherwise that's going to be a planet 7 victory here by Archon Salaine Morn. So this is a very fast-paced, very furious game. Hopefully you don't mind my somewhat inability to keep up with all this action going on. And note that Archon and Kith are now in their respective HQs. Kith used her initial combat action in order to retreat. Now that's going to be, okay, so it's going to be Taylor with initiative. Those are the new Team Covenant tokens, by the way, that first planet token there. Kind of a motley assortment of different tokens. Third-party tokens being used in this game, but Regardless, those Dying Sun's Marauders are nicely sitting at planet number 1 to block off Kith's victory condition, and really all Kith can do is maybe go to planet number 1. The Chimera, though, is going to be arriving exhausted, and then Kith herself is going to be able to, like, she'll be beaten up in very short order, but she's not bloodied yet, so Kith could maybe go to planet number 2. She'd drop off the Chimera. You could use Chimera Den as an action to relocate any number of Chimera tokens to a target planet, namely planet number 1. When Archon Salaine Morn won a battle the previous round at Iridial there, she didn't have any units to heal, or I'm sorry, she actually healed the 2 points of damage from that Clavex Warleader, and now it's just going to be a copy of Slith Mercenary positioned at planet number 1, and that's all Kith has to try to kind of surmount the opposition there. So if Kith wins planet number 1, that is going to be the game going to Kith. Kith has got more resources than Taylor does, so Taylor's not going to be able to outright purchase control of that Slith Mercenary, and very interesting here, that Slith Mercenary is just a 1-cost 2/2 with a couple of command icons. So what exactly are we going to see? Archon Salaine Morn arrives at planet number 1, but she's bloodied, remember, and Kith arrives at planet number 2, which is going to be the route a target unit planet, but by the time she has the opportunity to route anything, Archon Salaine Morn is going to have an HQ full of units with no eligible targets. So we could see this game end in whatever player ends up winning the battle at the final planet takes the game, and something tells me that this lowly Slith Mercenary is by itself going to be unable to overcome Taylor's units currently positioned at this planet. So Archon Salaine Morn is going to use her first initiative, she's going to use her first combat turn to retreat from that planet. The Slith Mercenary therefore uses its opportunity to deal a couple of points of damage to the Dying Sun Marauder, and do we see a Clavex Warleader or not? The Dying Sun Marauder takes a swing at the Slith Mercenary. It's presumably going to be killed, but then we've got a perfect action window to throw out a Warleader. It could drop into play, it could kill that Dying Sun's Marauder, and then we could see the Clavex Warleader itself take a swing at the Warleader controlled by Taylor, and if we had a couple of Warleaders, that could be a reasonable planet win, unless Taylor's sitting on multiple copies of, maybe he's got another Archon's Terror, perhaps he's got those Shadowed Thorns Pillagers I keep alluding to, but which we've yet to see. So what exactly are we going to see from Taylor? I believe we're waiting on his combat turn, and this game is definitely coming down to the wire. It's fascinating to be pitting our latest Dark Eldar Warlord against one of our classics. That's going to be the Dying Sun Marauder, only dealing out 1 point of damage to that Slith Mercenary thanks to the discard of a copy of Promotion, and now Dying Sun Marauder is going to end up being killed. Now those Chimera tokens are going to be moved over to planet number 1. Note that one of them is indeed ready. We could see that token damage the unwounded Dying Sun Marauder, and then, as I keep saying it, a double Clavex Warleader could easily win this planet, potentially anyways, win this planet for Christopher, but what are we going to see? It's going to be Christopher's opportunity to take an attack there, and we've got that Chimera token. I can see a copy of Warp Storm in Taylor's hand. He's got the resources for it, and we actually see that played now, so that's going to be 2 points of damage to each and every unit at that same planet, which does not possess an attachment. That's going to be a couple of dead Chimera token. It's going to be 2 damage on the Dying Sun's Marauder and the Clavex Warleader, and of course one of those copies of Marauder is going to be outright killed. So if you were going to do the whole Clavex Warleader play, there is definitely no time like the present. But looks like Iridial is going to be captured. That's going to be a planet added to Taylor's victory display. That means Iridial cleanses the 2 damage off that Clavex Warleader, and looks like we see a copy of Gut and Pillage used by Taylor. So that's going to be 3 additional resources for Archon Salaine Morn after she's won a battle at a red material type icon possessing planet. And now we're going to be going into the very final round here. Whichever player ends up winning this battle is going to end up winning the game. That's what the rule book told me, and let us see. Siren Ziflex is the opening play for Kith at planet number 1, as if I should have expected anything else out of the likes of Christopher Dale Bates. So each and every unit that Taylor ends up deploying is going to be it's going to be exhausted after entering play. The Dying Sun's Marauder could potentially be readied if you manage to somehow win the resources at that planet, but Archon's Palace is going to be able to block that, so that lone copy of Dying Sun's Marauder isn't going to be able to do much. And even though Kith is going to end up generating a Chimera token, Kith herself is just sitting at 1 lowly hit point, and that definitely about sucks for... Like, if your Warlord only takes 1 damage and then is jettisoned from that planet, that makes it awfully difficult to win games. But we've got another copy of Kabalite Harriers entering play and then being exhausted at planet number 1, but they deal a point of damage to an enemy undamaged army unit upon a Kabalite being deployed at that same planet that you control, and Siren Zithlex is going to be saved from that damage thanks to a copy of Promotion. Archon Salaine Morn arrives at planet number 1. She's got 6 hit points left, and now it's going to be up to Chris. What in the hell does he have in his hand? Does he have Clavex War Leaders, or does he just have garbage? It's all going to come down to this. The Archon's Palace is going to shut off the Siren Zithlex bonus, and that's going to be the Nexus of Shadows, resulting in a gain of 1 card there to the left for Taylor. So even though he's accrued a whole hell of a lot of resources over the course of this game, he's definitely got some mileage out of Nexus of Shadows. I'm not sure if he's used it maybe 3 or possibly 4 times over the course of this game, perhaps even more than that. But at planet number 1, looks like we see another instance of Raid. That's going to be an erroneously ready Dying Sun's Marauder. Hopefully these aren't going to dramatically alter the outcome of the game, but to you dear viewers out there, let this be a lesson that take 1 resource does not equate to gain 1 resource, as counterintuitive as that may sound. But what is it going to be? We've got Siren Zithlex and a Chimera token at that planet, and Packmaster Kith. I guess Archon's Terror is not going to be able to remove Siren Zithlex, but it could easily get rid of a Chimera token. I believe Chris has got 4 resources. Yeah, that's going to be enough for a copy of Clavex War Leader if he has another instance thereof. Chimera token takes a swing, and is that going to be damage dealt to? All right, that's going to be damage dealt out to Archon Salaine Morn, and now things are looking pretty frightening indeed. This is going to be an incredibly close, incredibly harrowing match. That's going to be our erroneously ready Dying Sun's Marauders taking a swing at Siren Zithlex, and that is a copy of Raid discarded as shield, so it takes no damage, and therefore it's not going to be outright obliterated by the copy of Clavex War Leader here. So, oh man, Taylor is taking a hell of a gamble by keeping his Warlord at this same planet. Kith takes a swing. Archon Salaine Morn takes a couple points of damage. Archon Salaine Morn retreats from that planet. Siren Zithlex deals the killing blow to that copy of Dying Sun's Marauder, and now it's going to be... that is a Clavex War Leader being dropped into play somewhat suboptimally, but do we have anything from Chris? Is this possibly going to be the GG right here or not? Kith isn't going to be able to do much against this Clavex War Leader just because it's a 3-3, there's another 3-3, and even though that 1-2 really isn't doing a whole hell of a lot of anything, are we going to see Siren Zithlex or Kith be the target? That is going to be a bloodied Packmaster Kith, so Kith is going to be removed from that planet immediately. That's going to be the end of a combat round, and now Siren Zithlex and the Chimera token, all of those units are going to end up being readied. Unfortunately, the Shadowed Thorns Pillagers sitting there in Taylor's hand are no longer going to be able to contribute to combat because he doesn't have the resources to put him into play. A Chimera token takes a swing thanks to the discard of a copy of Doombolt. That's only going to be 1 point of damage to that unit, and it looks like Chris has scooped, so that is going to be the GG. Good game, well played by both of our players, but congratulations to Taylor Parolini on a Planet 7 victory. So, a tremendous thank you to Chris for sending me in this game, again, taken from the heart of FFG itself, their event center in Roseville, Minnesota, and again, congratulations goes to Taylor Parolini for managing to beat the established powerhouse Packmaster Kith with our newest Archon Salaine Morn. So, as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button or press the dislike button if for some reason you did not care for this content. If you're not already subscribed to the Hive Tyrant, be sure that you click that subscription button just to make sure that you never miss any of the content pouring out of this channel. If you'd like to keep up with me on social media, I would definitely encourage you to follow me on Twitter or on Facebook, and if you ever feel inclined to help support the Hive Tyrant, I would be absolutely honored were you to consider making a small monthly donation to my Patreon. Even $1 or $2 on a strictly monthly basis nevertheless does wonders in helping me to afford my file hosting and operating expenses. If you yourself are a content creator, if you're producing podcasts or videos or articles, whatever it happens to be, get in touch with me and I am more than happy to promote your content. But as always, I'll just end this by saying thank you once again for watching, and as ever, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come.